Are you a lifelong fan of General Hospital?
Are you a new fan who wants to know more about the history of the show?
Do you enjoy talking about the show with others?
Do you find yourself yelling at the TV?
Is your self-care an hour a day in Port Charles?
If so, we invite you to join hosts
Amanda Kimmel
and Shannon Coach at the place where all the hidden conversations take place and secrets are revealed.
Meet us at Pier 54,
a General Hospital fan podcast. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the Port Charles 411 of Bobbie Spencer, part 11 for the years 2000 and 2001. Where did we leave off last year or last week?
So she was with Roy because she had broke up with, like, they weren't together yet. She had broke up with Jerry, or I guess Jerry broke up with her because he got caught for money laundering. So he was being sent away. And she was continuing her flirtation with Roy, trying to figure out what he is. And I did get a smidge ahead of myself because I had watched all of the videos in a row.
I think it's addicting, isn't it?
It is. She was mad. Her and Carly had been feuding, I had said, because they found out that Hannah was a FBI agent, and that had not happened yet. That happens.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned that at the end of last week. Yeah,
I did, because the videos are just so good. You don't want to stop them. I was watching Bobbie moving forward for the next coming weeks, and I got to Tony's death, and I was like, stop. This is way too advanced, and I cannot keep watching this because I'm going to mess up the recaps, and I'm going to start crying because I don't want Tony dying. So, spoiler alert, Tony dies.
Until like 2005, huh?
Yeah, spoiler alert, Tony dies.
I feel like we've talked about that enough at this point.
I would hope everyone's caught on it by this point that Tony's no longer with us. But yeah, it's not part of where we're at yet. So I stopped YouTube and was like, okay, I need to focus on reading and not watching on some of these points. I really wish that they did have the whole every season out for us to watch, because I would waste way too much time, but it would be great to rewatch everything.
Oh, it would. Yeah, I would have nothing.
It would have been.
I would cancel my life.
It would have been, we're on our third year of Lucky. It's okay. We're going day by day now.
Oh, that'd be a lot. Well, they'd be little mini episodes, but still, no. Once we get a writer, an assistant, then we can do that.
All right.
So it's the new year. And after playing in the snow with Laura and the kids, Bobbie returned to the house and instinctively looked for Roy, prompting Laura to tease her about first loves that never fade, except for Laura's first love would have been Scotty. And that is one that they fought over.
So that was another, as I was reading all of the stuff about Bobbie, just the weirdness of they all like shared the same, like dated the same person at the same time. I'm like, okay, this is so gross to think about. I'm over it.
But is that who Laura was talking about?
She was just teasing. I don't think that I mean, her and Scotty do start talking again. So maybe she was starting to feel those flutters, but they weren't there just yet.
Okay. Bobbie changed the subject and left soon after. Meanwhile, Roy was being pressured by Agent Larkin for information on Sonny. Bobbie walked in, defended Roy, and threatened to report Larkin. Afterward, Roy told her not to intervene in his business, and they clashed over his work for Sonny. At the hospital, Bobbie spoke with Tony about Lucas before Monica arrived and launched into a bitter tirade about Carly. Bobbie stayed calm and reminded Monica they'd agreed not to take sides in their children's conflict. So was Monica just mad about Carly and how she was cheating AJ and everything?
Yep.
Okay. Outside Kelly's, Bobbie secretly watched Roy comforting Hannah. Misinterpreting their closeness, she awkwardly apologized to Roy later for interfering, and he told her he wasn't so different from the man she once knew. He offered to walk her home, but she declined. Inside Kelly's, Tammy snubbed Hannah, and Bobbie half-heartedly defended her. Tony came in, and he and Bobbie talked about disappointment and moving on, and then about Carly. What was their disappointment?
Just the fact that they weren't together anymore. It was along those lines of like past loves, because Tony was seeing these interactions between her and Roy. And at some point in time, he says that he always knew there was a piece of her heart that was like locked away that he couldn't get to because of Roy.
Tony really did have a way with words.
Yes. He was a nice guy. He just had that mental break. Okay. We did love him for a good reason.
We all have the bad side of us.
Right, exactly.
At the Port Charles Grill, Bobbie found Carly grieving Jason's absence. She comforted her daughter, but when Carly spotted Sonny across the room, Bobbie warned her not to go to him. Bobbie then confronted Sonny herself, demanding honesty about Roy and urging him not to drag Roy deeper into the mob. Later on the docks, Roy and Bobbie had a painful conversation about choices and consequences. Bobbie insisted Roy didn't need to return to a life that had already cost him so much. Roy said he wasn't the same man she had loved 20 years earlier, but he still wanted to spend time with her. Soon after, Bobbie learned, so was Roy trying to keep her from falling in love with him?
He wasn't sure what he wanted, because again, at this point, because I spoke too far ahead last week, at this point, she didn't know that he was working FBI and for Sonny. And so he knows how complicated all of that is. He's trying to get for the FBI, he's trying to get information on Sonny, but he doesn't really want to turn Sonny in because his target had been Jerry all along. And so he's not trying to mess with Sonny, but that's the position that he's in. Obviously, her daughter's involved in Sonny's world because of Jason, but then the next paragraph will tell us that she ends up pregnant. So I tried not to go down that storyline because it's really Carly centered, but she was mad that Jason had been away. And so she went to Sonny's and screamed and yelled at Sonny about Jason needs to come home and why is he okay with all of this? And that was whenever they ended up having their big fight that just happens to fall into bed together because, that's how all big fights go with people that you supposedly don't like very well, I guess.
Right. Okay. I just didn't know if he was trying to say, no, seriously, stay away from me.
He was sending
don't want to fall in love with me.
Yeah, he was sending mixed signals because he would make comments like that and then be making those goo eyes at her.
Well, I mean, it's hard if he still loves her. Okay, we'll just go on. Roy said that he wasn't the same man that she had loved earlier, but he still wanted to spend time with her. Okay. Soon after, Bobbie learned from Tony that Carly was pregnant. When she traced her to the women's center, she arrived just in time to stop Carly from going through with an abortion. Carly broke down, confessing that the baby wasn't AJ's or Jason's, but Sonny's. She explained that panic, jealousy, and anger had driven her into Sonny's bed. Bobbie tried to guide her, but Carly refused to tell Sonny the truth, insisting he'd take the child from her. She resolved to pass the baby off as AJ's. Bobbie insisted that lies only destroyed families. Carly reminded her mother how many people would be hurt if the truth came out. Though the argument ended unresolved, Carly admitted she knew Bobbie came because she had cared. Bobbie later told Roy about Carly's pregnancy. Roy's reaction revealed another secret. Hannah was his daughter, not a romantic interest. Their shared histories with abandoned children deepened their understanding of each other, though they disagreed fiercely about Sonny. Bobbie believed Sonny had a right to know. Roy believed no child needed a criminal for a father. Bobbie tried and failed to reach Carly several times. Roy warned her not to tell Sonny, while Bobbie argued that secrets already harmed Michael and would harm this child too. Carly eventually came to Bobbie's home, and they fought about whether Sonny should be told. Carly insisted that she had to protect her children at any cost, even if it meant living a lie with AJ. Bobbie feared the truth would surface eventually, hurting everyone involved. Later that night, when Roy visited the brownstone, Bobbie admitted she hadn't told Sonny, couldn't get Carly to listen either. Roy gently pointed out that Carly fought dirty because Bobbie once had too. Bobbie laughed, embarrassed, and confessed that she hadn't understood love at all when she was young, until Roy. Roy and Bobbie spent an evening reflecting on their past and the mistakes they wish they had avoided. Their conversation is interrupted when Sonny arrives, asking to speak to Bobbie alone. Roy leaves, and Sonny confronts Bobbie with his suspicion that Carly is pregnant with his child. She must have been glowing and stopping the coffee.
Right? That's the only way to tell.
If you're listening to this now, Portia is pregnant, and everyone just has figured out that she is pregnant because she stopped drinking coffee. That's literally the main clue that everyone is picking up on.
Oh, so funny.
Bobbie confirms it. Though Sonny vows to take responsibility, Bobbie scolds him for betraying both Carly and Jason and warns him not to act impulsively. Later at Luke's club, Bobbie confides in Roy that she told Sonny the truth and worries she may have lost Carly forever. A blackout forces the club to close early, and Bobbie stays to help Roy clean up. The two reminisce about their youthful Valentine's Day together, and they end up dancing, rekindling old feelings. But Carly soon storms into the brownstone, furious that Bobbie betrayed her confidence. She blames Bobbie for destroying her life and storms out, declaring she never wants to see her again. Shaken, Bobbie seeks comfort from Roy, who reassures her that Carly will return. Bobbie admits she didn't want her grandchildren raised around the mob. At Kelly's, Laura arrives when Bobbie is fretting about Luke's whereabouts. Laura reveals that Luke and Felicia are off together, causing tension between them as Bobbie insists Felicia and Luke are only friends, while Laura is certain their behavior is irresponsible. And this is what they were off on that adventure, like following the letters. Even though Chloe was in town, there was something to do with Lila's letters that led them off on an adventure.
Yep.
Soon after, Carly reluctantly calls Bobbie for help, saying her life is collapsing and Sonny is trying to control her by threatening to take the baby. Bobbie tries to guide her, suggesting that Carly and Michael move into the brownstone. Bobbie proposes the plan to Monica, who eventually agrees, but AJ overhears and refuses. Meanwhile, Hannah visits Roy at the club, revealing that Carly is pregnant and venting about Sonny. Roy admits it is dangerous for Hannah to be associated with an ex-con. Bobbie can't stand the secrecy and wonders if Hannah had anything to do with Jerry's arrest, but Roy denies it. The two promise not to let their children come between them. That's a tough thing to do.
Yes.
Mac later interrogates Roy harshly until Bobbie intervenes, accusing Mac of misusing his authority because he is upset about Felicia and Luke. Mac reluctantly backs off. That night, Roy walks Bobbie home and kisses her passionately, though he later claims he shouldn't have.
See? There's that back and forth.
Yeah. Goo eyes is one thing. Kissing me passionately, totally different. That's definitely mixed signals. He believes his life is too chaotic for a relationship. Bobbie insists they consider it a kiss between friends.
Yeah.
No, I have a kiss between friends. There's no tongue involved.
The word passionately is not used to describe the way you kiss a friend.
No. Comforting, caring, sweet.
Right.
Hannah confronts Roy, urging him not to let anything stand between him and Bobbie if he loves her. Tony gives Bobbie parallel advice, noting that she always kept a part of her heart close to him, insinuating Roy occupies that space. Still, Roy is cool and distant when they next meet. Felicia's marriage begins to unravel as Max sees incriminating footage and refuses to believe her explanations. Maxie lashes out at her mother, and Felicia, distraught, confides in Bobbie, who is stunned to learn Lucky is alive.
Yes. I don't know how the whole letter investigation, because I didn't go down that rabbit hole, led to them then having conversations with Helena and stuff. And then Felicia put on her PI hat and was like, here, Luke, not only are we doing the whole letter thing, but now I'll help you find Lucky. And so I guess there was a video where it looked like her and Luke were a couple, but they weren't actually being a couple. It was that they were trying to get information on where Lucky was.
I'm sure that we covered that in the 52 part of Lucky. It's
maybe
probably
we need
just
to go
been
back
a year.
And do another one.
It's been a year since we've talked about that storyline, so I'm sure we forgot. And the worst part is, and I do this when I'm listening to other podcasts and the hosts forget things. I'm like, no, but you guys said, and like, I mean, I'm not, but it really is something different when you're doing the show yourself.
Right.
For some reason, when we're in this conversation, because then we'll talk about it and we suddenly remember everything. But there is just some kind of like, I don't know if it's like a podcast host brain fog or something like that I can't articulate. But if you are sitting at home going, you guys totally talked about this and you had this whole conversation around it, I know. I know exactly what you're doing because I do it too. And I do it to myself when I re-listen to our show. It's great. Anyway, Bobbie goes to the Quartermain mansion only to learn Carly has abruptly moved in with Sonny. Carly later wreaks chaos into Sonny's penthouse, redecorating as a tactic to get thrown out. Sonny refuses to budge. Bobbie arrives, tries to negotiate a solution, and urges Carly to consider living with her. But Sonny insists he and Carly must learn to co-parent.
And this is whenever Sonny was like super possessive and crazy with his ideas. Not crazy. I mean, it's a nice idea, but that if you got somebody pregnant, that was it. Like you were together then, you needed to co-parent, you were a family. He needed to be part of Michael's life. Like there was no other option. And Carly was like, we could just have a baby together. We don't need all this extra relationship. We don't even like each other. Like this happened because we were in an argument and fell into bed and he is having none of it. Like she is being treated pretty much like his property at this point.
Well, if you think about it though, so she's gone through this already with Michael and the whole, we can make the dad whoever we want the dad to be. But
right.
This is only his second pregnancy and the first one was Lily and she went boom.
Yes.
So he lost. Sorry, if you're newer to the show, I sound really insensitive to people being blown up. And that really started with Cassandra, and that's a whole other thing. But no, so I mean, but Sonny's only experience so far with someone being pregnant with his child is they're a target, they're in
Right.
danger,
He
and the
did
best
want
way to
to
protect
keep.
them is
Yes, he wanted to keep her safe. He just, instead of conveying all that in a nice way of like, listen, I'm just scared because all this stuff happened and I want to keep you safe. He's like, no, I said you're going to live with me and that's it.
gotcha. Okay. So back at Luke's club, Roy continues drifting deeper into Sonny's business despite Bobbie's objections. They argue, and Bobbie storms out, overhearing Roy and Benny discussing a dangerous meeting with Sorel. Bobbie becomes worried enough to seek more information. With Carly's help, using a key to Sonny's desk, she secretly copies the address of Sorel's meeting and goes there herself. Bobbie enters Sorel's warehouse, but is quickly discovered and taken hostage. Roy, unaware she has followed him, later begins to notice that she is missing and grows alarmed. When he eventually confronts Sorel, he is beaten badly while Bobbie is held captive as leverage against Sonny. Sonny, Roy, and Carly anxiously await word from Sorel. Carly confesses that she enabled Bobbie's intrusion by giving her the desk key. Meanwhile, Sorel keeps Bobbie imprisoned, using her as a pawn to pressure Sonny into doing business with him. Roy searches desperately, eventually tracking Bobbie to the warehouse. He breaks in, frees her briefly, but is overpowered again, and when he awakens, she is gone. Sorel moves Bobbie to a car to await an exchange. As Sonny prepares to trade a suitcase for Bobbie, Sorel inspects the contents and refuses to release her, threatening to kill her instead. But when Sorel orders the chauffeur to drive, the partition drops, revealing Roy disguised behind the wheel. Alive and defiant, he tells a shaken Bobbie to fasten her seatbelt because they are getting out of there. Why do I just picture like a good old 80s car chase like this? He's turning the bend on two wheels, two tires. Sonny warned Sorel that Bobbie, the hostage he had been using as leverage, was getting away. As Sorel tried to threaten him, one of Sonny's men pulled a gun, and Sonny told Sorel his options were gone. Carly warned that Bobbie might be dead. Moments later, Bobbie arrived safely with Roy, and Carly embraced her mother with relief. Bobbie called Tony to check on Lucas, while Roy and Sonny shared a drink. Roy thanked Sonny for orchestrating the rescue, though both men were aware that Sorel remained a threat. Bobbie refused Carly's offers of food and insisted on returning home. Roy accompanied her, and once at the brownstone, Bobbie admitted she had felt safe but emotionally shaken. Their closeness resurfaced, and they kissed. Overwhelmed, Bobbie confessed she had always loved Roy. He responded with a devastating confession of his own. He had not been working for Sonny at all, but he was an FBI informant. Bobbie was stunned. Roy then told Bobbie the full truth. After testifying against Frank Smith, he had lived a life of altering undercover assignments and prison time. The FBI discovered he was raising Hannah, whose family had abandoned her, and allowed him partial custody only as long as he cooperated. So he wasn't Hannah's biological father?
I don't know if he was her biological father or if they just completely stepped out. I'm not sure. I didn't look into that further.
Okay. No problem. Hannah believed he was a heroic agent. Roy was exhausted by the lies and wanted out. But all Bobbie could hear was that he had been free at times during the last 20 years and never once come to her. He admitted he was currently on assignment against Sonny, though originally he had been tracking money launderer Jerry. Bobbie was furious and demanded to know if she ever mattered to him. Roy insisted she meant everything to him and that he stayed away only out of shame. She asked him to leave, and he did, devastated. Bobbie returned to work at Kelly's, pretending normalcy. Hannah soon found Roy on the docks, where he confessed that he feared he had lost Bobbie. Later, when Agent Larkin accosted Bobbie with questions about the kidnapping, Roy intervened angrily, threatening the agent. After Larkin left, Bobbie revealed she had overheard the confrontation. Roy told her he planned to quit the FBI, even if it meant going back to prison, because lying to her and Hannah was worse. Bobbie visited Carly, who was still clashing with Sonny. They discussed Carly's growing feelings for Sonny, and Carly urged Bobbie not to throw away her second chance with Roy. But Bobbie admitted Roy's secrets had deeply wounded her. Hannah later told Roy that the FBI was refusing her resignation. When Bobbie arrived, Roy admitted that if he didn't bring Sonny down, the FBI would send him back to Pentonville. Bobbie suggested stalling, but Roy refused to lie any longer and decided to come clean to Sonny. Bobbie tried to stop him, terrified that telling Sonny would cost him everything. Roy insisted he could not continue living as a fraud. Bobbie begged him not to leave her, but he believed she would hate him if he continued deceiving her. When Benny arrived to speak privately with Roy, Bobbie waited outside. Benny reassured Roy that Sonny trusted him more than most. Roy later told Bobbie about it, and she came up with a plan. She could confess to Sonny and ask for help, allowing Roy to keep his cover by feeding the FBI false information. Roy hesitated, but Bobbie pressed him to protect himself. They kissed, and she asked him to call after he spoke to Sonny. Carly interrupted a conversation between Bobbie and Hannah and overheard that Roy was Hannah's father and an FBI plant. Startled, Carly ran to Sonny and told him everything.
Of course she did. Oh, and it shouldn't be. Okay, so obviously we know GH doesn't do math the way that you're supposed to, but if we're doing normal people math, Hannah shouldn't be his biologically because he went to jail 20 years ago, and Hannah, in order to be an FBI agent, should be older than 20.
Yes.
But again, if you're doing GH math, it absolutely could be his baby. I don't know.
Yeah. The way that it read, it sounded like
he just kind of found her.
Orphaned, and he took her under his wing and just took care of.
Right. I'm sure I could Google it, but it will be fun to see how GH math works.
Carly interrupted a conversation. Sonny said he already knew Roy was a snitch, though the part about Hannah was new. And this is Sonny and Hannah had already had a thing?
Yes.
Roy arrived intending to confess, but Sonny dismissed him from all association with his organization. Roy admitted he would now return to prison for blowing his cover. As he left, he explained that Hannah had risked her job to protect Sonny. Carly was amazed that Sonny let Roy go, but Sonny said Roy had protected him and that he owed him. Roy told Bobbie what happened. She was crushed that Carly had overheard and intervened, but promised Roy she would find a way to keep him out of prison. Carly confronted Bobbie, accusing Roy of using her and endangering Sonny. Bobbie accused Carly of starting the whole chain of trouble and warned that she would never forgive Carly if Roy returned to prison. Carly refused to help, and Bobbie threw her out. That night, Bobbie created a romantic atmosphere for Roy, who wanted to only focus on their time together. They made love, knowing it might be their last night. In the morning, Roy prepared to turn himself in despite Bobbie's pleas for him to run or seek Sonny's help.
Roy asked Liz at Kelly's whether Hannah was around, then met privately with Bobbie and asked her to tell Hannah the truth about him. She agreed. Liz, Hannah, and Bobbie discussed Roy. Hannah still believed he was a great FBI agent, while Bobbie cautioned her to let Roy handle things himself. Meanwhile, Roy confronted Larkin about his altered FBI deal. Larkin threatened Hannah and had Roy arrested immediately. As Roy was being taken away, Bobbie burst in and promised to help him. Larkin refused to listen to her or reconsider the deal. Roy was jailed. Bobbie sought help from Alexis, who said that without proof of wrongdoing, there was little she could do. Carly barged in with her own troubles, but Bobbie harshly told her to stop using Michael and to go home. Carly later confided in Ray, who comforted her. And at this point, Bobbie told Carly that she was doing the same thing that she had done with Jason. Like anytime that Jason was not doing what Carly wanted, then she would say she was taking Michael and leave. And then she did the same thing with AJ. And so now she's trying to use that same tactic with Sonny. And if it's not working, Carly needs to basically grow up.
Kids are not pawns.
Right, exactly. Bobbie next confronted Sonny, demanding he help Roy. Sonny insisted there was little he could do, though he later arranged protection for Roy in Pentonville. Bobbie also tried to explain the situation to Hannah, who struggled to believe her father was not a federal agent, but a longtime informant. Hannah asked Taggart about Roy and learned his file confirmed Bobbie's story. Devastated, she cried in Taggart's arms. So she went from trying to date Sonny to get information to now she's dating Taggart. Not that it matters, just we love Taggart, so we're going to talk about them dating. Bobbie again pleaded with Sonny, insisting Larkin was corrupt. Sonny hinted that he had bribed Ford and insisted Bobbie stop visiting Roy, but she headed to the prison anyway. AJ confronted Bobbie about Michael, and she threw him out. Tony updated Bobbie on his hand surgery and introduced her to Ray. Bobbie shared Carly's history with her. Later, Bobbie visited Roy in prison, but he told her not to come again. He believed Larkin would hurt her or Hannah to punish him, and he walked away despite her tears. Bobbie asked Alexis again about Roy's situation. Alexis said that without evidence, the Justice Department saw no deal to uphold, and Roy could only help himself by becoming valuable to the FBI again. Hannah visited Roy in prison. Larkin watched and then reprimanded the guard who had failed to kill Roy earlier. Roy tried to reassure Hannah, though he insisted Bobbie should not visit. Hannah persuaded him to change his mind. After she left, Roy confronted Larkin, who hinted he would kill Roy himself. Claiming to be transferring Roy for protection, Larkin arranged to move him secretly. A guard loyal to Sonny witnessed the transfer. Later, Hannah told Bobbie that Roy had agreed to see her, and Bobbie left for the prison at once. Bobbie went to visit Roy in prison, but after waiting a long time, she was told by the warden that Roy had been transferred following an attempt on his life. When she demanded to know where he had been sent, the warden refused and told her she would have to speak to Agent Larkin. At the same time, Carly and Sonny were growing closer, sharing quiet moments in the comfort of their family life. They planned an evening out, but when Bobbie burst in and pleaded with Sonny to help Roy, tempers flared until Carly intervened. After Bobbie left, Sonny and Carly acknowledged how they had been defending each other and shared a tentative kiss. And this was basically Bobbie just saying to Sonny, like, anytime you've come to me for help with something with Jason or with something with Bobbie or with Carly, I've done anything that you needed me to do, and now here I am asking for your help, and you're telling me that you can't do anything? Like, you have been everywhere. I want you to use your influence.
Right.
Roy, meanwhile, admitted he had no proof against Larkin, and he and Sonny agreed to work together. Their plan was to set up Larkin so he would falsify evidence against Sonny. Bobbie was brought in, reunited briefly with Roy, and apologized to Sonny for her earlier outburst. She admitted she had confronted Larkin directly, which only put her in danger, and both Sonny and Roy warned her to avoid further risks. Bobbie and Roy continued their affair secretly, even as Johnny kept interrupting. She later disguised herself as a pizza delivery boy to visit Roy in his basement hideout, where they spent more time together while Roy phoned Larkin and taunted him. Bobbie crossed paths with Hannah at Kelly's and reluctantly confirmed that Roy was a fugitive but safe. Hannah, not knowing the deeper situation, said she would go to Larkin for help, prompting Bobbie to warn her that he was corrupt. Elsewhere, Felicia's troubles with her daughters and with Max spilled over into Bobbie's day, and Bobbie tried to advise her to confront her own feelings and stop expecting others to fix her life. She was like super harsh with Felicia, like, dude, being involved with my brother is not a good idea. Would you just stop? Hannah later warned Bobbie that she was being tailed and created a diversion so Bobbie could escape. Bobbie hurried to Roy and passed along Hannah's message of love before the couple resumed their nearly nonstop physical reunion. Luke arrived at the brownstone and asked Bobbie for details about everything involving Sonny, Roy, and Hannah. Bobbie admitted she was deeply involved but not backing out. Later at the hospital, Carly told Bobbie she was marrying Sonny, but Bobbie reacted skeptically. Luke arrived and warned Bobbie she had no future with Roy because Roy and Sonny were headed towards prison, but Bobbie refused to accept it. Carly assumed they were arguing about her, but Bobbie brushed her off. Sonny and Carly then attended their ultrasound together, learning the baby was a boy. Afterwards, Bobbie informed Roy about Luke's worries, and Roy reassured her while preparing for his next move. Meanwhile, Lucky resurfaced quietly in town, and Luke finally encountered him on the docks. Bobbie's hospital duties were interrupted because she had important things to attend to, which involved secretly following Roy and Sonny's plan on the docks. She waited anxiously while Sonny and Roy met Larkin, who pretended to negotiate a deal but instead attempted to force Sonny to kill Roy. Sonny resisted, Larkin insisted, and Sonny appeared to shoot Roy. Bobbie heard the shot and panicked, but Sonny told her it was only a truck backfiring. After Bobbie was taken home, Larkin expressed concern about her as a witness, and Sonny calmed him down. At the safe house, Roy emerged alive, having used a small oxygen tank to hide underneath the water during the fake execution. The group congratulated each other and instructed Bobbie to behave as if she were grieving until Larkin relaxed. Afterwards, Roy praised Barbie's role and they embraced, while Sonny returned home to Carly for a quiet moment. Bobbie questioned Sonny about his upcoming marriage, but he insisted he was doing the right thing. Bobbie then joined Roy, who revealed Larkin's plans. She insisted on accompanying him to the Grand Keys, and when Larkin was already at the airport gate, Roy reluctantly took her along on the condition that she obey him completely. Because, you know, Bobbie's really good at doing that.
Absolutely.
In the Grand Keys, they tracked Larkin and infiltrated a banker's office to steal his account numbers. They succeeded, but Larkin burst into their hotel room. Bobbie distracted him long enough for her and Roy to escape by jumping into the pool. They hid on the beach when Roy vowed to get them both home safely. Larkin, meanwhile, called for reinforcements. Stranded with little money, Roy considered entering a high-stakes poker game to earn enough to hire a plane. Bobbie offered her diamond bracelet to pawn, and although they received far less than it was worth, Roy used the money to join the game. Roy was like super mad because the pawn shop only gave them $400 for this diamond bracelet, and Bobbie was like, "Do you not know how pawn shops work? Like, why are you so mad?"
Just a side note, too.
Uh-huh.
Private planes are not that much to actually charter. I have a friend who is a pilot, like he got his pilot's license, and it is on my 50 before 50 to learn how to fly. Not many people know that. And so I was just like kind of, yeah, that's been on my brain for a long time. But we were hanging out a little while ago and I was like, out of curiosity, like what's an average cost so that I can be like, okay, is this actually something I can do?
Right.
How much should I be saving for it? Like, isn't it reasonable? So for his last 1.2 hours of flying, he pays $185 rental fee.
Oh.
And so but then he also had an instructor with him. It was $307.
Okay. So yeah, that's totally doable.
So yeah, I mean, if it's
Yeah, Bobbie's bracelet should have almost covered it already.
yeah,
They're
because he
$400.
said with lessons, it would start with this kind of a fee. So like that's with lessons. So like you could definitely $1,000, especially back then.
Right.
$400 would definitely get you some good airtime, I would imagine.
Okay. Good to know.
I know that's like a really random thing that I just learned.
You always have random facts. I love it. After some losses and a chaotic bar scene, he eventually won a large hand. They convinced the bartender to help them find a pilot, and the next day they secured a small plane and planned to return to Port Charles. Okay, so the chaotic bar scene, it was on purpose. Like Bobbie was flirting with someone else to kind of get the table distracted so that they could ensure that Roy was going to win a hand. Typical Spencer craziness. At the airfield, Bobbie hesitated at the tiny airplane, but Roy coaxed her aboard. During the flight, Larkin appeared with a gun, which I also am confused by because if Bobbie's like, wow, this plane is so little, I'm not sure I feel safe, how is Larkin just hiding in it? But okay, whatever, GH writers. Roy managed to knock him out briefly, strapped the only parachute onto Bobbie, and jumped with her from the plane. On the ground, shaken but alive, they embraced and planned to find a road in the morning. Back in Port Charles, Roy reported their return to Sonny, and Bobbie went to comfort Carly, who had lost the baby. Sonny and Roy met on Sonny and Roy met on the docks discussing grief and parenthood. Larkin, unknown to them, was lurking nearby. Soon after, Bobbie and Roy were discovered half-dressed together by Tony and Lucas at the brownstone, prompting Tony to question whether Roy was a good influence. Later, Bobbie reassured Roy that love mattered more than reputation. As events unfolded, Monica confided in Bobbie that she might be pregnant, and Bobbie encouraged her to take a test. Bobbie also comforted Laura, who was longing for Luke. Roy reassured Laura that Luke still loved her. Bobbie invited Roy to live at the brownstone, but Roy refused, saying it would not be comfortable for Lucas. Before Bobbie planned a vacation with Roy, he asked Mike to look after Luke's club. So while in Hawaii, Roy became anxious about money and worried that Bobbie was used to the luxuries Jerry had provided. Bobbie assured him she didn't care about wealth, only about him. Despite his insecurities, Roy secretly called Mike for money and tried to maintain the illusion of a perfect trip. So he called him once and he asked him to get $3,000 out, and then he called him again and got another $3,000. So he was really trying to show off to Bobbie. They slam kiss.
I mean, that's a nice trip now.
Right. Like you're in Hawaii already. If she's telling you she doesn't need any extra perks, just stick with it, dude. You don't need to keep getting extra money. But him and Mike were close. So that's important later. They swam, kissed, and spent quiet time together. Roy eventually bought tickets for a cruise, though he worried about finances. Bobbie later chatted innocently with another man at the bar, which made Roy bristle, but he apologized and gave her a lei as a memento of their trip.
The necklace.
Yes. Get your mind out of the gutter. I said a lei, not later. Bobbie and Roy returned from a peaceful vacation in Hawaii to find tension waiting at home. At the brownstone, AJ taunts Carly about losing Sonny's protection and informs her that he plans to fight for custody of Michael. Bobbie is surprised to find Carly living there again, and this is all like aftermath because of her losing the baby. Bobbie and Roy discuss living arrangements after the trip. Bobbie wants him at the brownstone, but Roy insists on getting his own place after 20 years without one. He rents a small apartment behind Jake's where he's attacked by two men angry about his past as an FBI informant until Lucky intervenes. Roy proudly shows Bobbie the modest apartment and gives her a key. At Luke's, Sonny looks for Roy while Carly spars with both Hannah and AJ. Sonny threatens AJ about interfering with Carly and Michael, and Bobbie confronts Sonny about where Carly is going to live. Carly refuses Sonny's offer to move back in with him. Later, Carly runs into Roy while he's shopping for his apartment, not knowing that Bobbie had already decorated it. Roy accidentally frightens Bobbie when she walks in unexpectedly, and he apologizes, admitting how shaken he still is by his violent past. She walked in, she did have a key like it said, but she walked in without any notice, so he got flustered and had a gun out. Carly throws a chaotic birthday party for Bobbie, and Roy arrives late, unaware it's her birthday. After leaving briefly on business involving Sorel, he returns with flowers and dances with her. Meanwhile, Bobbie argues with Carly about moving out of the brownstone, and Carly decides to move temporarily to Jason's. Roy secretly tries to help Mike with a debt to Sorel. Telling Bobbie only part of the truth, Sorel refuses Roy's payment and demands the money come from Mike or Sonny, which makes Bobbie suspect Roy is working for Sonny. She warns him that his dangerous habits could send him back to prison. Worried, she asks Sonny to stay out of Roy's life, but Sonny says Roy isn't working for him. Bobbie pressures Carly to stop manipulating Sonny and gives her 2 weeks to move out. Bobbie warns Hannah about AJ while worrying aloud that Roy might slip back into crime. Tony criticizes Roy's influence on Lucas, and Carly begs Bobbie to help her get Sonny to take her back. Bobbie refuses to participate in Carly's schemes. When Sonny appears at the brownstone, Carly covers her manipulation by pretending that she's house hunting. AJ later tries to buy the brownstone, then attempts to rent a room and threatens to sue Bobbie whenever she refuses. At the police station, Bobbie finds Roy supporting Sonny in the aftermath of a Carly/Sonny arrest, and she grows more anxious about Roy resuming risky behavior. Mac tells her that a word from her might keep Roy out of trouble. When Roy seems prepared to chase after Luke, Bobbie wants to go with him, but he tells her that she would risk alerting the authorities. Bobbie visits Carly at the penthouse, where Carly reveals she plans to marry Sonny. Bobbie urges her to marry for love and stop clinging to Jason. Bobbie later learns Luke has been arrested in London and informs Nicholas. Luke asks her to tell Lucky personally, and she reunites briefly with her brother in the police station. Meanwhile, Carly learns from Mike that Sonny truly loves her. Bobbie encourages Carly to be honest about her feelings, but Carly instead prepares a romantic seduction. At the courthouse, Bobbie comforts Felicia after Mac ends their marriage. Bobbie is pleased when Roy and Lucas bond, but Tony remains critical of Roy. Laura later causes trouble at a club gathering, dancing provocatively with Roy while Bobbie watches. Tony again criticizes Bobbie's judgment when she makes a mistake on a patient's chart, and she continues making errors at work. Distraction also mounts at home. Carly pushes Bobbie to let her run Kelly's. AJ flirts with Hannah, and Bobbie invites a large and complicated group, including Sonny, Carly, Hannah, Mac, and Felicia, to Thanksgiving dinner. Bobbie receives alarming news that Kelly's property tax hasn't been paid, adding to a growing list of forgotten tasks. She confesses to Roy that something is wrong. Carly refuses to attend Thanksgiving at the brownstone when she learns who else is invited. Bobbie watches nervously as Sorel pressures Roy about Sonny and Xander. She asks Luke to intervene. Roy investigates strange smells in Kelly's and jokes that Luke shouldn't cook anymore. Later, after watching Stefan and Nicholas reconcile, Roy drives Bobbie home, but they lose their brakes and crash. Roy suspects Sorel may have tampered with the car. When they review Bobbie's auto work order and find no record of brake service, she panics that she is losing her memory. Roy insists something else is going on. Their fears deepen when Roy discovers a Swiss bank account in Bobbie's name containing a large sum of money and paperwork with her forged signature. Bobbie denies opening the account and wonders if Jerry could have mistakenly involved her, though she doubts that he would risk implicating her. Roy consults the
Yes,
FBI.
people mistakenly sign somebody else's name on foreign bank accounts all the time.
I'm so sorry, Shannon. I opened a loan the other day and I just accidentally signed your name to it. I would never mean
okay, mistakes happen.
Right. I would never mean to implicate you in my finances. Oh my gosh. Roy consults the FBI and learns that rogue agent Larkin has been released, leading him to suspect Larkin is behind everything. Bobbie continues trying to maintain normalcy, going Christmas tree shopping with Tony and Lucas, who asks for a family holiday. Roy finds Bobbie there and tells her the trouble isn't her fault, but only later reveals that Larkin is likely responsible. He warns her not to go anywhere alone. Bobbie finds an alarming letter in Roy's apartment, and he insists Larkin planted it. Despite her fear, Roy refuses to let Larkin ruin their holiday. At the hospital Christmas party, Sonny promises Carly and Michael he'll meet them after finishing his business. After Alan reads the nativity story to the children, Tony, dressed as Santa, hands out presents as the season continues under the shadow of Larkin's threat.
And then we pick up in 2001, where Bobbie and Roy's relationship becomes strained after Bobbie finds a mysterious letter at his apartment, which Roy believes was arranged by Larkin, the FBI agent he once helped expose. Roy insists Michelle Bedford, whose brother died in prison after Roy's involvement in the case, would never have forgiven him, as the letter suggests. Suspicious, Bobbie begins asking questions about Roy's past with Michelle, when later Melissa Bedford, Leo's sister. Although Roy tries to distract Bobbie with plans for a sleigh ride, she secretly meets Agent Ford to ask about Melissa's role in the old case. Ford can't share much, but confirms it was one of Roy's most painful cases. Bobbie becomes convinced Melissa and Larkin might be working together. Roy is upset that she visited Ford, but tries to focus on their life together rather than the past. Meanwhile, Bobbie confides in Laura, who remembers Roy once mentioning a woman he regretted hurting. Bobbie feels increasingly jealous and confused. At Kelly's, Felicia admits her own difficulty letting go of Mac, and Bobbie admits she feels she might be losing her mind over the strange things happening around Roy's past. When Roy later asks Felicia where Bobbie is, Felicia realizes Bobbie is hiding something. In truth, Bobbie has gone to Chicago to examine old transcripts about Leo Bedford. She discovers Melissa's testimony seems staged to portray Roy as cold and ruthless. Back in Port Charles, Bobbie continues lying to Roy while she snoops through files at the Blues Club and eventually discovers a stack of Melissa's old love letters to him. Bobbie eventually goes to Boston under the guise of visiting Tiffany Donnelly, but instead confronts Melissa. Melissa claims she wrote the letters to release her anger towards Roy and insisted she has no love for Larkin. She says Roy betrayed both her and Leo, though Bobbie leaves more unsettled than before. Bobbie's lies begin piling up. Felicia urges her to repeatedly tell Roy the truth before the situation destroys their relationship. Roy eventually discovers Bobbie flew to Chicago, and the confrontation is explosive. Roy decides to see Melissa himself. Bobbie is terrified that her lies will push him back to his past. After spending the night in Chicago, Roy returns and finally confides in Bobbie. He admits the guilt he carries over Melissa's brother, as well as his desire to be a better man for her. Bobbie apologizes for her lies, and they reconcile lovingly. Roy even surprises her with a Valentine's necklace. But then Melissa moves to Port Charles, having been hired as a surgical nurse at General Hospital. Bobbie is stunned and furious. She tries to get Alan to dismiss Melissa and even directly urges Melissa to leave, but Melissa refuses. Roy defends Melissa's decision, frustrating Bobbie. Though he later asks Melissa to leave town, Bobbie changes her mind and tells Melissa she can stay. Melissa outwardly acts gracious, but privately seems pleased to remain near Roy. Melissa begins quietly inserting herself into Roy's circle, visiting Luke's club, chatting with Carly, and showing up wherever Roy is. Bobbie tells Carly not to repeat her own mistakes of her doubting Roy, but soon after, Melissa appears at Luke's, and Roy ends up playing piano for her, enraging Bobbie. At Luke's party, Roy behaves distractingly after lying to Alexis. Melissa arrives, claiming Audrey invited her. Bobbie senses Melissa's growing presence everywhere and her influence on Roy's moods. Soon after, Roy fails to end a conversation properly with Bobbie, and Melissa catches him alone, offering sympathy he seems willing to accept. At Kelly's, a group of frustrated women, Bobbie, Felicia, Alexis, and Chloe, commiserate about men. Oh, that must have been a great conversation. Why don't I remember that? I remember the girls talking about Patrick at Jake's, like Kelly, Liz, Robin,
Right.
and someone else, but I don't remember this.
I feel like at Kelly's it wasn't as entertaining because when they were at the bar, they were like shooting shots and
They were doing shots of tequila, drooling over Drake, right?
Yes. So that was a little more memorable. This seems like it was more just a grape fest of, oh, you're having guy problems? Let me sit down and tell you mine.
But the tensions with Melissa deepens at GH when both women are called in for emergency shifts. I'm assuming that's Melissa and Bobbie.
And Bobbie, yep.
Melissa proves competent and is praised by Alan and Monica, which only upsets Bobbie further. Everything explodes when a desperate drug-seeking patient takes Melissa hostage at gunpoint. Okay, so this is 2 hostage situations in the past 6 months.
Yep.
Rather than let the police handle it, Roy sneaks into the room trying to protect her. He's FBI. That is law enforcement.
Yeah, but they
I mean, he's by himself, so that's not really...
He needed to wait for some backup, yeah.
I hear you. The situation escalates, and during the struggle, Roy is shot. Bobbie is devastated and furious. She blames Melissa outright and warns her to stay away from Roy. Later at the hospital, Roy wakes and immediately asks if Melissa is okay, which stings Bobbie. Melissa apologizes, finally admitting she once intended to come between Roy and Bobbie, but she now knows he loves Bobbie. Roy later comforts Melissa and takes her hand just as Bobbie walks in. Bobbie lashes out at Melissa again, and when offered a chance to help with charts, she hides Melissa's work out of spite. Okay, how about we don't make the patient suffer in your spitefulness?
Right? Right. They were making Bobbie a little immature here. Yeah.
Even when Luke warns Bobbie that trying to coexist with Melissa was a mistake, the tension remains raw. Roy refuses to blame Melissa for the shooting, while Bobbie cannot forgive the chaos Melissa has brought into their lives. Their relationship continues under the shadow of Roy's dangerous past, Melissa's lingering presence, and Bobbie's lingering mistrust, despite the love they both profess. Luke visits Roy in the hospital, and Bobbie slips out to give them privacy. Roy asks Luke to help him leave the hospital, and more importantly, how he can regain Bobbie's trust. Luke warns Roy that he is the last person to ask for relationship advice, but tells him that Bobbie needs reassurance that Melissa poses no threat. Bobbie's history of painful relationships has left her insecure. At the nurse's station, Tony questions Melissa about an incomplete chart. Melissa insists that the chart was finished with Bobbie's help, but when confronted, Bobbie denies knowing anything about it. Tony scolds Melissa, and once he leaves, Melissa accuses Bobbie of setting her up. Their argument escalates until Roy and Luke arrive, but both women lie to cover the clash. After Melissa wheels Roy out for discharge, Bobbie confesses to Luke that she did sabotage Melissa. Meanwhile, Melissa tells Roy the real reason she came to town. She intends to win him back. Later at Bobbie's home, Roy is resting on the couch while Lucas plays nearby. Bobbie notices Lucas seems feverish and leaves to get medicine at GH. Is this now the 3rd or 4th time that Lucas has been severely sick?
Right, and he always gets sick whenever she's not there. And I know we've mentioned it before, but why is the actual hospital the only pharmacy in town?
Right. Like their grocery store doesn't have, first of all, they don't have a grocery store.
They don't have a grocery store.
The grocery store doesn't have a pharmacy.
Like I'm going to open a CVS in Port Charles and make tons of money because I'm going to have a pharmacy there. They apparently only have one at the hospital.
Again, excellent opportunity for sponsorship. Express Scripts.
Right. There you go.
We're coming up on the winter season. Let's have somebody's medication be delayed because it was mail ordered and the snowstorm just is preventing it from getting there.
Perfect.
Let's have it be Lucas now that he's living at Windermere and his diabetic medication.
No, poor Lucas does not need to get sick again.
Well, it's been a little while since he's been sick. So Lucas's medication can now be delayed because of a blizzard, and it's not able to be transported to Spoon Island. And he obviously can't get to work for it also. That does not make sense since he works at the hospital, never mind.
They deliver mail to Spoon Island? And they have to have
Remember
a PO
we talked
box.
about this?
We're so off it.
We talked about this. We're like, how do they get their mail?
All right. Well,
anyway. Lucas quickly worsens and collapses. At the hospital, Bobbie encounters Melissa, who claims she only came to clear out her locker. Tony reassures Bobbie he will always be there for Lucas. Lucas is soon rushed into the ER by Roy and Melissa. Oh, so that was like foreshadowing. They didn't know that Lucas was on his way, and Tony was telling him or telling Bobbie. Okay. Bobbie pushes Melissa away from helping. Lucas deteriorates, and the cause is unclear. This wasn't, Faison in the milk was already...
No, this is Helena.
Yeah. While Roy waits outside, he collapses himself as his stitches burst. Bobbie ends up assisting Melissa in Roy's treatment despite their animosity. Afterward, Bobbie again berates Melissa, who finally stands up for herself, insisting she won't be bullied or driven out of town. Roy tries to comfort Bobbie, who is terrified for Lucas and jealous of Melissa. Roy reassures her he only loves her. Lucas's glucose stabilizes, but his fever remains dangerously high. Felicia comforts Bobbie and reassures her this will not end like BJ's death. Luke and Laura arrive separately to offer support. Scotty brings Bobbie a small good luck charm from her youth. Carly shows up wanting Bobbie's help, only for Roy to insist Bobbie must rest. Lucas worsens, and Tony and Bobbie struggle to diagnose him. Melissa tells Bobbie she intends to remain at the hospital whether Bobbie likes it or not. Lucas begins having seizures, and Bobbie collapses in grief. Roy comforts her while Tony fights to save the boy. They really should be talking more about how Lucas's diabetes impacts his work, because he's had seizures quite frequently, and I don't think he's had them as an adult, but like if there's something that he's doing medically, health-wise, whatever, it would be really nice to hear him mention that. I have a friend who has epilepsy, and so if she has a seizure, she loses her license for like 6 months. Mm-hmm. And stuff like that. Like, I would imagine that he would probably... Okay, if we haven't seen Lucas have a seizure since he was a kid, there has to be a reason. Like, he has to have been doing something. Or did we just forget about it? Because we like to do that, too.
I'm sure we just forget about it. I feel like these seizures are from the fever, though. Not anything to do with something that he could prevent one way or the other.
Yeah. Because when he was a kid, his diabetes definitely seemed like diabetes is a serious... It needs to be taken seriously. But it seemed like so life-threatening to him.
Right. But I also think that was because he was undiagnosed at first. Like that first time that he collapsed, I feel like is when they found out how serious everything was.
Yeah. So then suspicions turn towards Helena Cassadine. Roy reports Helena was asking Melissa about Lucas earlier, and Luke urges Tony to consider poisoning. Lucas slips into a coma. Luke confronts Helena in the corridor and nearly attacks her before Mac intervenes. Helena's men kidnap Tony, dragging him below the hospital into an underground laboratory.
It's all coming back to you now, isn't it?
This was Stavros. Wasn't this Stavros coming back?
I was going to say, it's all flooding your mind, isn't it?
The second the underground laboratory. Guys, we did an entire series or episode on the unthawing of Stavros.
Because at first your brain's like, why would Helena drug Lucas? And then, Tony's in the basement.
That's right. Helena reveals she is forcing Tony to witness and participate in her most extreme experiment and warns Lucas will die unless Tony cooperates. At the hospital, Bobbie keeps vigil. Maxie brings BJ's old teddy bear to Lucas. And Bobbie takes it as a sign of hope. Melissa quietly leaves a St. Jude pendant under Lucas's pillow. In the lab, Melissa discovers a virus and Tony secretly prepares an antidote. Lucas takes a sudden downturn, and Tony reluctantly injects him with serum, claiming it's from Johns Hopkins. Miraculously, Lucas wakes from the coma as if he has never been sick. Luke presses Tony for answers, and Tony dodges. As Bobbie reels from Lucas's recovery, she learns that Carly has betrayed Sonny with Roy's help. Feeling blindsided, she ends her relationship with Roy. Roy insists he acted for Carly's safety, but Bobbie declares that she can no longer trust him. Melissa comforts Roy and explains why she stayed silent about Bobbie sabotaging her. Meanwhile, Felicia confronts Bobbie about whether her anger comes from Carly's disappearance or jealousy over Melissa. Roy, exhausted by constant suspicion, tells Felicia he still loves Bobbie, but is tired of defending himself. Okay, so in this instance, I understand the whole Lucas thing, but he has gotten sick
Yeah.
a lot as a kid from his diabetes, that we should be having it.
I mean, I feel like he could bring any of his illnesses when he's dealing with patients, especially kids at the hospital. Be like, oh, I understand you don't like hospitals. I was sick once. I was here for a week. I was even in a coma, kind of stuff. But he doesn't. So this is getting into, you had asked about was Laura still having feelings for Scotty? He was. They had dated for a while, and Laura's not committing to him the way that he wants her to, and Bobbie's obviously having issues with Roy. So Bobbie and Scott go to the grill together to provoke jealousy in Laura and Roy. Bobbie drunkenly confronts Sonny and throws a drink in his face. Later, Bobbie catches Stefan stealing Helena's discs from Luke's safe. Roy intervenes, Bobbie and Roy argue again, and Bobbie insists that their trust is broken forever. And again, this was a side story that I wasn't getting into, but Luke and them had managed to steal, they were like CDs from Helena, and then it was just like all the nonsense of Luke and Helena getting information back and forth from each other.
Okay.
Bobbie advises Scott about his pursuit of Laura, then attempts to talk sense into Carly, who is plotting to win Sonny back. When Bobbie learns Roy helped Carly betray Sonny, she begins reconsidering her breakup. But when she goes to Roy's apartment to reconcile, she finds Melissa in a towel, fresh from the shower. Bobbie assumes the worst and leaves. Roy insists nothing happened, and nothing had happened. It was just Melissa manipulating everything. At the hospital, Bobbie overhears nurses gossiping. She announces publicly that she and Roy are over. Melissa again insists nothing happened, and both women admit with biting irony that Roy will now be available. Luke and Roy begin investigating strange equipment entering General Hospital. They turn to Bobbie for help identifying it. As Roy sneaks into a locked lower-level room, Melissa finds him, and he asks for her trust regarding the Cassidines. And this is, again, just more of the Stavros storyline that Helena's having random stuff delivered because she needs to thaw out her son. A bomb traps several people in Sonny's penthouse, and Bobbie rushes to the site with Roy and Melissa. Carly survives and later realizes she might be pregnant. She bursts into Sonny's office and announces the news. Back home, Bobbie gives Carly cautious support. Carly buys a pregnancy test but delays taking it. At GH, Xander is injured and Sorel lies dying. Roy and Melissa are caught in Sorel's room and reprimanded. Melissa is nearly fired, but Bobbie steps in and admits she misplaced the missing test results, clearing Melissa's name. Melissa tells Roy thanks Bobbie and wishes her a happy birthday. Bobbie shelters Luke, who is delusional from Helena's toxin. Tony recognizes the symptoms and works desperately on an antidote. Luke's memory swings between past trauma and current danger. At the safe house, Luke becomes violent and hallucinates their father. Bobbie calms him until he sleeps, but when she returns from getting food, he has disappeared. Bobbie faces questioning about Sorel's murder, but her colleagues back her up. She later helps Laura obtain a drug that can simulate death. Big difference there. Not stimulate death, simulate death. We're only pretending. Only pretending, not trying to kill. Bobbie tries to jog Luke's memory, but he remains lost in the past. When she brings Tony to administer the antidote, Luke only trusts Bobbie to give the injection. It fails to help. After another episode, Bobbie's soothing talk helps Luke settle, but eventually he slips away again. Scott asks Bobbie about Laura's safety, and Bobbie warns him that he cannot compete with Luke and Laura's bond. Jax arrives with a vial of Helena's biotoxin. Bobbie, initially evasive, admits it matches the poison given to Luke, and Tony may have a cure. Jax gives her the vial on the condition she keeps him informed. Laura calls Bobbie in a panic when Luke collapses and won't wake. Bobbie rushes to him, cradling his face and begging him not to leave her. At the hospital, Scott overhears Bobbie and Tony discussing Luke's condition and follows them to a warehouse where the two doctors are trying to move Luke. Setting aside his resentment towards Luke, Scott helps them get him to the hospital. Laura thanks him for his support and finds comfort in his arms, but their moment is cut short when Luke regains consciousness and calls for her. Scott watches as as Laura reassures Luke she is right there. That's like a whole nother storyline. How many times has Luke and Laura thought that they were with the other one, even though they weren't? And so they had to pretend that they were a couple.
Right.
Meanwhile, Carly hesitates to sign her divorce papers and asks Bobbie's advice. Bobbie urges her to think of Michael above all, adding that Sonny will never be able to give Carly the trust she needs. Carly prepares to sign just as the police arrive and escort both her and Bobbie to the Quartermain mansion, where Mac has gathered everyone tied to Sorel's murder. He declared that one of them is the killer and no one will leave until he uncovers the truth. AJ reveals Sonny coerced him into signing custody papers, but Xander refuses to confirm it. Mac unveils a portrait of Sorel and continues the interrogation. Then deep underground, Alexis and Stefan are still prisoners of Helena when Bobbie is dragged in. Bobbie lashes out at Stefan for his past actions, but Alexis defends him, and eventually Bobbie softens. Stefan apologizes for the way he treated her, and Bobbie believes him. She recognizes how much he loves his sister. The three agree to work together against Helena. Back at GH, Luke is restless and wants to go after Bobbie, but Roy and Melissa try to keep him in bed. Melissa soon discovers Luke has slipped out. Underground, Alexis imagines Sonny coming to rescue her, then wakes as guards bring Stefan and Bobbie into the conference room. They again vow to work together. When Stefan fails to open an air vent to escape, guards return and seize Bobbie, hurling Stefan aside when he tries to intervene. Bobbie is brought before Helena, who demands to know Luke's whereabouts. Bobbie refuses. She confronts Helena about the pain that she has inflicted on so many lives. Helena coolly answers that she is all for revenge. Bobbie insists Helena will never defeat the Spencers, but before she can leave, Stavros bursts in, declaring it's time to finish everything. He's unfrozen, yay! Elsewhere in the maze, Roy and Jack struggle to escape while Helena taunts them. Guards find them, and during the struggle, Helena slips away only to be intercepted by Bobbie and Alexis. Together, they all finally make it out of the labyrinth. Above ground, Luke and Laura separately remember the day marks that it would have been their 20th wedding anniversary. Each is flooded with memories. Roy finds Luke smashing a radio playing their wedding song, and Bobbie later interrupts Laura as she destroys old bridal photos, and Laura agrees to spend Thanksgiving with her. Later that evening, Laura appears in Luke's doorway while he quietly recalls their wedding kiss. Bobbie talks with Carly about recent conversations with Sonny. Carly insists Sonny cannot forgive her, but Bobbie reminds her that self-worth is more important than clinging to a relationship without trust. Oh, that needs to be on a t-shirt. When Carly asks why valuing herself hurts so much, Bobbie tells her that no one ever said it would be easy. As Thanksgiving approaches, Scott grows impatient, waiting for Laura's answer to his proposal. He helps Bobbie prepare for the holiday, but becomes snide when he learns she invited Luke. Bobbie pushes him to admit why he feels threatened by Luke and Laura simply sitting together at dinner. I think we all know why he feels threatened by that, Bobbie.
And why is he upset that his sister, that Bobbie invited her brother?
Right. Like, if anyone's the odd man out here, it's you, Scott. But at the same time, Bobbie's a little silly to be like, why would it bother you that they're sitting next to each other? Because it would. On Thanksgiving Day, Luke arrives at Bobbie's home, but Bobbie and Scott are arrested for speeding and fail to show up. During dinner, Lulu blurts out that her mother plans to marry Scott. Laura later apologizes to Luke for how he found out. Luke says she's free to marry whomever she wants, but asks whether it really has to be Scott. And this is a funny scene. He goes to bail Bobbie and Scott out of the jail. And so they both go to walk out of the jail cell, and the cop there, it's not their local police station, it's a different police station. The cop there is like, nope, not you, sir, just her. So Luke only bailed Bobbie out. And then the officer is like trying to decide if he's going to let Scott go. And Luke just won't stop talking. He's like, oh yeah, he's a speed demon. He likes to drive fast. He likes his fancy cars. And so then Laura ends up coming in and gets Scotty out because Luke is just making it all that much more worse.
Mr. Bantering.
Yes, exactly. It was funny. When Laura tries on her engagement ring, she hears a message that Bobbie and Scott. Oh, sorry, I got ahead of myself. When Laura tries on her engagement ring, she hears a message that Bobbie and Scott need bail money. She heads to the small town jail, but Luke arrives first and pays Bobbie's bail. He then misleads the sheriff into believing Scott is on drugs, causing the sheriff to search Scotty's car and further complicating things. And the whole time, Scott's like typical attorney. He's like, "You don't have a warrant to search my car. Stay out of my stuff." Scott later seeks Bobbie's advice for getting over the woman he loves, and they talk. Scott heartfeltly paints her wall until Luke appears, prompting him to leave. Luke questions why Scott allows Laura to wander the docks alone, and Bobbie reveals that Laura turned down the proposal. At Luke's bar, Mike approaches Roy about joining a poker game. Roy refuses, warning that Mike always gets in over his head. Mike, rattled, confesses to Bobbie that he's hiding something from Sonny and fears Sonny won't forgive him. Bobbie urges him to let go of the need for Sonny's approval. After Mike leaves, Roy sits with Bobbie. They speak warmly, thank each other for surviving this year's turmoil, and agree to remain good friends. They toast to Luke and Laura's love boat cruise, hoping the estranged couple will find their way back to each other. And that was how they ended that year. Like there wasn't all the hoopla that we expect. Like
There was no New Year's Eve party or anything.
Nothing that Bobbie was involved in anyway. That it even mentioned. Like normally even if Bobbie's not directly involved in it, it says like, and the year ended with, and I include that. But there was nothing great about this one. Just her and Roy wishing Luke and Laura well.
Well, I don't think there actually the past couple years, because last year there wasn't anything, and then the year before that either.
True.
Oh well, I like when they at least tell us, and they spent the quiet night in, cuddled on the couch.
I just like whenever they end it with the Christmas party. Like it needs to end with tone. No, the Christmas party. I like when it ends with the Christmas party, even though there's obviously that week between Christmas and New Year's. I like when it ends with Tony or Alan reading the Christmas book to the kids, and then it just ends there. And then it says... So
there wasn't even a Christmas episode.
Right. There wasn't anything... Again, I mean, maybe there was, but it didn't register on anything that had to do with Bobbie as I was scanning through it. So it was more about Luke and Laura finding their way back. Poor Scotty. Again.
And breaking hearts in the...
Right,
the process.
Like, Scotty thought he was getting to the point where he was finally going to be engaged to her again, and nope.
Aw.
So there was a lot of cute Lulu through this too, because she was like little. She was like Donna's age, and so I hadn't really, in my mind, Lulu went from being a baby to being a teenager, and then it does show some of her being around during this time. So that was cute.
So we saw her between like 5 and 7 years old.
Yes.
Interesting. I don't remember that either. So
she kind of reminds me of Donna because she has like dark black hair at the time.
Yeah.
So
I never understood why they gave little Lulu such dark hair.
Me neither, because I understand like kids' hair starts dark and then it can get lighter through the years, but neither Luke or Laura
it was like pitch black.
It was. You're correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, join us on Monday as we recap this week's shows.
Have a good weekend.
And we'll meet you at the pier.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to go to pier54podcast.com to subscribe on your favorite platform. Don't forget to leave us a review. And you can also follow us on many social media channels. Just search for Pier 54 Podcast. Also, we are not perfect, so if there is something that we missed or messed up, just let us know by emailing us at pier54podcast@gmail.com.